Welcome on into BKL Nightly. It is the game day recap edition. Thad Brown along with Caleb Carr. The Bills just absolutely curb stomped the New York Jets today, 30-10, and it wasn't even that close. Welcome on in, everybody. We're going to spend the next half hour or so wrapping up what happened. A lot of good to say about the Bills, a little bit of bad about the Jets probably, but this was, Caleb, when you start out with the initial reactions to this game, there were a number of things the Bills, I think, needed to do, wanted to do, kind of a little bit of a prove-it game. To me, the thing that stood out was just the way that Sean McDermott had everything ready to go. This was a game that, you could see a reason where it goes sideways. Emotional win, Jets, even Sean McDermott said, the Bills thought they had momentum, and boy, it wasn't even close to that. This was 100% red, white, and blue their way from the kickoff.
Oh, yeah. They dominated all sides of the football today. Both in the run game, Josh Allen didn't really need to do too much in the passing game just because of how good James Cook and that offensive line was. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they shut down Justin Fields both through the air and on the ground. They shut down that run game. And like you said, McDermott came in with a plan. He was ready to go. They got beat on the ground both offensively and defensively last week. And McDermott said, we're not going to let that happen again.
Bobby Babbage, too. And let's start with the defensive side of the ball and what happened there. The thing that I loved was how much they were attacking in the run defensive game. Right from the bat. Second snap of the game, Matt Milano comes on a run blitz, between the guard and center, I think it was in the A-gap, to stop a play. Christian Benford, corner blitz, earns an 11-yard loss on what would have been an end around. Trey White, corner blitz, another 5-yard loss. I mean, the Jets might have had a decent plan for the run game. We did see Breece Hall break one or two early, but because the Bills had him in second and 50 million, it didn't even matter. And that, to me, is just a great game plan from the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and I said that last week it felt like a lot in the run game, they were letting Derrick Henry come to them. We saw a lot of times where guys were trying to make tackles on Derrick Henry in the second level, and it just wasn't working. But today, they were just, we're going to meet you at the line of scrimmage. We're going to meet you behind the line of scrimmage. We're going to sack you. We're going to get you for a tackle, a loss. And that was all three levels. That was the defensive line. That was the linebackers, the secondaries, the cornerbacks, the safeties. All of them were doing it. Cole Bishop had a sack. Trey White had a tackle for loss. Christian Benford had a tackle for loss. Joey Bosa had a bunch of nice plays. Some of the other defensive linemen had some nice plays. It was just all around. Everybody was in the backfield, it felt like.
I mean, the Jets, first few possessions, 3 and out, one play and a fumble. It was just over and over different stuff where the Bills were not only, winning drives, but winning them quickly, getting the Jets right off the field. We don't even know what kind of plan the Jets had because the Bills just snuffed it right away.
They never got to it.
Yeah, exactly. So look, there's a lot of different ways to win and be successful, right? And when you're just making enough big plays to do it, that's one way. And I've talked a little bit over the different last couple of years with the Bills that showing off different ways to win, different tools in the toolbox is fantastic. And we've seen this one before, so it's not like it's brand new. But, this was not, we're not going to let you run on us at all. This was, yeah, you might hit one or two, but our wins are going to be so dominating and so impactful that you can't respond from that.
Yeah, the Jets were just not able to get anything going. Every time they had a good play and, watching the game, I was like, okay, that might be something that the Jets are able to capitalize off of. They might be able to gain some momentum off a play like that. You mentioned a couple of Breece Hall plays. Justin Fields has a really nice 40-yard scramble. That was his biggest play of the game, both through the air and on the ground. But every time one of those plays happened, it felt like Buffalo just immediately was like, sack, you're done. Or tackle for loss, you're done. Or pass breakup, you're done. Every time it felt like the Jets were gaining some momentum, it was just done.
And it was challenging the quarterback, too. I've seen the Bills do this a couple times. If you get an offense where you might not respect the quarterback, or at least you want to make the quarterback make you respect him, which I think Justin Fields certainly falls in that category, by challenging him, by pushing everything up, by attacking, making the Jets even check out a run plays into something that might go over your head to take advantage of a run blitz. This is kind of the way the Bills operate, and I've seen this plan succeed before, and it succeeded again today. It also helped that when the Jets did have to pass, which was often because they were in third and long, second and long, that they had, a guy who was able to make a couple big time plays, and that's Joey Bosa. Exactly what you would expect from the pass rushing mercenary you bring in. He had a sack today. He had 2 forced fumbles. Now, he wasn't every other play in the backfield, but you don't need that. I remember this all the time. When you think about if there's 40 passes in a game, right? if the offensive lineman wins 39 times out of 40, but that one other play is a sack, that's a bad day for the offensive lineman because that's a 17 sack season, right? So if Joey Bosa is making 1 or 2 big plays a game, you are getting more than you're worth out of that signing, and the Bills saw that today.
Yeah, last week it was Ed Oliver that stepped up, and he was making those plays. Joey Bosa still had some nice ones, but it was mainly Ed Oliver. Well, with Oliver out today, Bosa knew that he had to step up and take that role, and he did, and then some. Very first Jets drive, very first Jets play, he goes in and knocks that ball away. That was a huge play that just immediately the Jets were like, okay, this is going to be tough, right away. And then he had another sack, another forced fumble that ended up being recovered by the Jets, but it still was a loss of like 10 to 12 yards, I believe it was. So like you said, it wasn't every other play, but it was when he needed to be. And even on plays where he wasn't getting a sack, he was applying pressure. He was getting right up there in Justin Fields' face.
And the other part of this defensive effort, which was, really, really good top to bottom, was that you had, Sean McDermott talks about it all the time, all 3 phases working together. It helps that while the Bills defense is going 3 and out, force a fumble, 5 and out, 3 and out, on the flip side, the offense is going touchdown, field goal, touchdown. You don't have to score 3 touchdowns in a row. The fact that every single time the Bills offense got the ball and just kept on adding to the pressure, kind of, closing those pinchers a little tighter, making it a little more difficult every single time. So when the Jets get back on the field and they're thinking, well, we haven't done diddly in 4 or 5 plays, and the score keeps getting bigger every time we show up. All those things, especially for a quarterback like Justin Fields that doesn't have, the confidence to think, well, I can rally this, I can make this work, or even a Jets offense. There's so much scar tissue with the guys who play on that team. The fact that the Bills offense, even though they weren't dominant early, were just, again, kept on squeezing, kept on just making it a little harder and a little harder every time. That helps your defense, kind of have the mental advantage.
Yeah, like you said, that's all they need to do. I definitely felt like there were a couple drives right away. At least early in the game, I was like, there's stuff left on the table from this Bills offense. But as the game went on, as the offense just continued to put up field goal, and the defense was just 3 and out, fumble, just getting stops, I started to feel like, okay, this is a day that the offense just doesn't need to be the star of the show. This is a day that Josh Allen doesn't need to put on his cape and go make these amazing highlight plays. This is a day that they can just slowly keep adding to the score and just kind of not waste the game away, but just let the clock tick and just keep adding on.
Before we fully talk about the offensive side of the ball, just to kind of wrap this up, I'm still looking at this drive chart. The Jets had 2 first downs in the first 4 drives, and the Bills had 20 points. So before the Jets figured anything out on offense, it's 20-0. Yep. And, I always say, I don't care who the teams are, what your game plan is, who you have, who's hurt. When you're down 14 points or 20 points, everything changes. And for today, the Bills kind of, put one foot on the Jets' neck before the Jets even figured out what to do. And when you're a team like the Bills, you're going to win those games, 101 times out of 100. Before, again, like I said, if we talk about the full offensive story today, there was that moment in the first quarter when Josh Allen, out of nowhere, just runs off the field for no reason. No one understands why. Now, I'm listening in the car today. I know you're watching. Take me through the visual, or maybe like your personal story of like, what's going on? Because I'd imagine there are Bills fans everywhere who saw their life flash before their eyes when 17 comes running out of the game.
Yeah. I was at my house during the first half of this game. So I was in the kitchen, which my kitchen does not have a direct line of sight to the TV. But I'm still listening, right? And I'm making some lunch, and all of a sudden I just hear the announcer go, oh, and Josh Allen's running out. That doesn't look good. And immediately I'm just thinking like broken arm or something's wrong with his leg or something. And I'm like, oh no. So I run out to the living room and I'm staring at the TV just waiting for someone to say something. And then it shows a clip of him like holding his nose. I'm like, oh, it's just a nose. Like, we're fine. It's fine. All good. But it was definitely scary at first. But he ran out like something was really wrong. And he said post game, like, I didn't want to get blood all over the place, so I totally get it. But like, dude, you got to know that you're the franchise. You can't look scared. You're gonna make everyone else be scared.
I mean, he's just thinking in the moment. I can't blame him. I know what you're saying. I do like almost on a weekly basis think about like, okay, what are the stories? Like if Josh Allen gets hurt, I'm just doing the reporter brain of like, all right, what happens next? Who would the quarterback be? What would my analysis be? What kind of an injury is it? How do I, so I've got this scenario like just running through my head every once in a while. And then to like hear it potentially play out I'm like in the car, I'm like just frozen. Like, this is not happening, right? There's no way this is happening. So fortunately, he was fine. I mean, the last thing anybody in the league wants is Josh Allen to miss any time, especially Bills fans and the Bills.
Yeah.
So after the game, he did talk about a little more about what happened. And, like you said, the fact that he comes right out of the game, he did kind of like throw Mitch Trubisky under the bus a little bit. Trubisky stepped up big, but you could have laid on the ground there and let someone come out and get you so Trubisky can throw a little bit and figure out what the play is. And he just ran in there. But anyway, here's what Josh and Sean McDermott had to say about that situation after the game today.
I pulled it when I probably should have handed it off. I tried to throw it, and I saw him push, decided to tuck it. I don't know what hit me. It was a knee, it was a hand, it was somebody. Helmet just kind of came down right on the bridge of my nose and just started leaking. So it's tough because you should go down there to give Mitch a chance to kind of catch his bearings to be able to come out there. Obviously, gushing blood. I just wanted to try to get off the field and stop it.
Kind of like a little shift change in hockey or something, and Josh runs off the field. Mitch goes out. I think it was a third down play, second and a third down play perhaps, and throws a seed in there, throws a dime, and that's hard to do with no warm-ups.
And for him to come off the bench like that and no warm-up, no nothing, to be ready, I think that's a true embodiment of the character and the man that he is.
Mitch, veteran quarterback, come in, didn't blink, and the huddle didn't blink. Their belief in him is extremely high. He came in and delivered. He executed, right, the way he's supposed to.
As those guys said, the throw that Trubisky makes coming out of that situation is not incredible. I mean, it's not the most ridiculous throw ever. It's a really good throw coming in cold. And separate of, Josh Allen said, hey, I should have gone down. The head coach could have called timeout there too. That was the one thing I was thinking in the car, like, Sean, call timeout, man. Like, your quarterback just ran off the field. Take a breather. Give everybody a chance to settle. It didn't matter. Trubisky came in, and that was the throw of the game. I don't care what Josh Allen did the rest of the game. His numbers weren't great. But Trubisky cold hit a small window to Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer won the route, but that's an NFL window. I was blown away by the play.
Right over Sauce Gardner, too. Sauce Gardner was in coverage. But to your point about the timeout, I was expecting there to be a timeout called. And when no timeout was called, I was like, okay, they're just going to run the ball. And then he snaps and he's standing in the pocket. I'm like, what are you doing? Why is Mitch Trubisky? He was sitting on the bench 5 seconds ago. Why is he throwing the ball? And then he drops it in. I'm like, oh, okay, you're okay. You can keep throwing the ball. That's fine. But that was a great play. Coming in cold, just in like McDermott said, just shows the confidence that both McDermott, Josh Allen, and just the entire offense has in him. Because if deep down Josh Allen was like, I don't trust Mr. Trubisky, he would have done something else. Like, I don't think
it's a good point.
He would have either stayed down and let Trubisky, but Josh Allen trusts him so much that it was just instant reaction to be like, get off the field. Mitch has got me. We're good.
And this play kind of encapsulates what I see as the theme for this game, which is Sean McDermott had his team ready to go. Like I said, just ready to make plays. Not just, I know where I'm supposed to be. I think there's a difference between I'm a chess piece and I'm supposed to be, knight to rook 4 or whatever the term is in chess. He had his guys ready to win. Not just be in the right spot, but to win. And Mitch Trubisky was the shining example of it. He's standing there with a clipboard, not really, but metaphorical clipboard, and just dropped it on the ground, ran in there, and threw a dime. And as we conclude this conversation, please drop the statistical knowledge that blows me away about Mitch Trubisky today.
Yeah, I was taking a look at the box score, and I was like, oh, yeah, Mitch Trubisky, he did throw 2 passes. Only the one was complete to Joshua Palmer, but it was a 32-yard pass. As we said, great pass. We've already been over that. But then I went over to the Jets side. Justin Fields, 3 for 11, 27 yards. So in one passing play, in 3 plays, I think he was out there because I believe he had a handoff as well.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. In just a handful of plays that Mitch Trubisky was out there, 1 passing completion, he had 5 more yards than Justin Fields had throughout the entire game. Now, granted, Justin Fields was out for the...
It wasn't 60 minutes. I know what you're saying.
It was not 60 minutes, yes. It wasn't a full 6 minutes, but at least 3 quarters.
Your backup beat the starter with 1 throw on the other team.
Exactly.
That's incredible. All right. It wasn't just the quarterbacks, obviously. This was mostly a run game for the Bills for good reason. And James Cook had himself a day, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. And you were talking about this earlier, as we were kind of prepping for this show. This was the guy you paid for. This was the guy who leveled up last year, the guy who looked stronger He's always been kind of elusive, but that play he makes on the touchdown run, there's some elusiveness to it, but there's a strength there. He's got a guy around his ankle, and to be able to stay on your feet, make a move and get away and then accelerate, find space and score. This is why you pay that guy the money. We might sit there and argue over the exact number, but this is why you do it. He looked like that top level guy. And for all the things that I think we talked about with the Bills coming out of the Baltimore game, things that didn't go well, not having the James Cook dimension, I think, got under-discussed. I think he had 40 yards last week. And in the second half, it looked like Josh Allen had to be Superman. James Cook made sure that was not the case today.
Yeah, he showed that he can lead this offense. He showed that he can be the focal point.
Showed again.
Yes. He's shown in the past. But at least for this season, he showed that he can still do that. There was some, at least from my point of view, there was some kind of like questions when that contract was signed of like, man, is he worth that much money? Because there's guys, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, there's guys getting a lot of money and they're obviously worth it. And to me, James Cook just, at that point, I was like, wasn't sure. And obviously it's just one game, it's just a couple of plays, but that 44-yard touchdown run, he had a guy around his ankles. And not only did, like you say, he spin out of it and then accelerate, he kept his eyes down the field. As soon as before he had even fully broken the tackle, he knew where he was going. And then he just accelerated right away. It was just a great play. He was bouncing all over the place. I saw a picture where there were about 4 or 5 guys around him. And it's like, how does he score on this play? Because he jumps from one to the other, wraps around another, and then he's gone. So a great play from him, and really, again, just one play, but for me, kind of showed why we paid him.
And the other part of this is the way the Bills used the run game. It wasn't dominant early. They struggled a little bit on offense to move the ball. That first touchdown drive, the Jets basically hand them on the roughing the passer penalty. Then the next 2 drives, even on a short field off a forced fumble, only a field goal, get a field goal in the next drive. But once the Bills kind of had control of the game, had their hands on the Jets and had them totally under control, Cook finished the game. The 44-yard run was one thing, but then in the second half, the Bills open up with a 6-minute drive and a 7-minute drive. And on the 6-minute drive, they've got 3rd and 4 at like the 12, at 20-3. And Joe Brady and Sean McDermott were good with, we're just going to give it to James Cook up the middle because we're in good shape. And even if, we have a problem, we're just going to run the clock out if we have to. That reminded us the amount of confidence the Bills have in this run game and James Cook and the way he finished this thing off. 2 other guys I liked in this game on offense, the 2 newer receivers, Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore has been active over Curtis Samuel the first 2 games of the year, maybe a little bit of a surprise. I really think both those 2 guys are kind of redundant, so you really only want to play one of them anyway. But Moore in this game, the 30-yarder in the second half on 3rd and 10, it shows how he can be an effective weapon against man coverage. And then Josh Palmer, again, like we talked about on the Mitch Trubisky play, he has beaten Sauce Gardner one-on-one. It's a route where he has the advantage, but whatever, he won the route. And having these 2 guys as release valves against man coverage, something the Jets play all the time, is a big, big deal because the Bills didn't have that last year. You go man against them a lot of the time, and everybody is covered, and Josh Allen, we go back to the Superman cape offense.
Yeah. For the wide receivers in general, nobody had like a huge day just because it wasn't a big passing day for the Bills. We've been talking about the run game a lot. But Elijah Moore, he had like a 40-plus yard reception to start the second half. And I think it kind of looked like his guy stumbled a little bit, but still he
won the route though. I know what you're saying.
He had it won before then. But just watching it live, I was like, oh, did he actually win that, or did the guy stumble? Right. But then watching a replay, I was like, oh no, he had him 100%.
The stumble helped,
yes.
and maybe the guy recovers, but Moore had the route won in my opinion.
Yeah, but then he beat him with his feet. He's very fast, obviously, and then he had an end around touchdown, which. He had 2 blockers there. Still made him a guy miss, though. Showed off his speed because he was able to get to that edge before anybody else was. So he's definitely an elusive guy that is going to be used more in this offense, I think. And then Joshua Palmer, again, only 2 catches for him today, I believe.
2 for 47, yep.
Yep. So, but one very big one when they needed it. Mitch Trubisky out there, you got to make that grab. You got to get that first down. But again, like you said, just having 1-2 guys that can beat man coverage consistently is a huge upgrade for this offense versus what there was last year.
Just be a release valve. Just be something that can help you out, in a big spot when the Bills absolutely need it. Sean McDermott talks about 3 phases all the time. We had a star in the 3rd phase today. I mean, Matt Prater did miss a kick. Another good game for him. What about Sam Franklin? The guy that the Bills brought over, he was a Chris Tabor favorite, we assume, connections with the special teams coordinator, and he paid off for the Bills early in this game.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% of where, I knew who he was. I knew he was playing. I knew he was active. Wasn't 100% aware of like what he would do. Early in that game though, kickoff, he tackles the guy short of the 20-yard line, I believe it was. And then the following kickoff, he did it again. And at that point I was like, who is this guy? Like I gotta look at this guy a little bit more. 2 big plays. He had another tackle, I believe. It was an assist, but again on special teams. So he had 3 big tackles on special teams that set the offense up not in great field position behind the 20-yard line. And for an offense that was already struggling, already down points, being at your own 15 is just even more pressure for a guy like Justin Fields.
Jets kick return game was pretty good against Pittsburgh. Well, not great, but now they did essentially fire the guy who was the return man last week because he had a fumble. So there's a whole different return group. But regardless, Bill's special teams, I didn't think they were great against Baltimore either. So a piece of improvement there with Franklin. The Bills have always had, not always, but very often had a guy who's been a special teams, specialist, and obviously most teams have it. But the Bills have had a guy that they've been able to depend on who's been good. Marcus Easley comes to mind, from a few years ago. For Franklin, if he can be that, for a guy that the Bills you think about all the things the Bills have kind of picked up out of the garbage dump, theoretically at the end of the season. You grab Matt Prater out of nowhere, your punters out of nowhere, your special teams demons out of nowhere, so Elijah Moore essentially was not wanted. And all these guys are making plays in this game today to, contribute to what was a dominating win. It speaks to, there's a conversation about Brandon Beane versus Sean McDermott, right? I think you get into it at one time or another. They have to work together to a degree, but I think Brandon Beane's moves are always going to look better because Sean McDermott knows what he wants. The coaching staff around him knows in large part what McDermott wants. When you drop anything into that incubator, you're probably going to get the most out of it because of how comfortable everybody is in their roles and what the direction of the head coach, what he wants. So spinning that down to the guy that just grabbed it, Sam Franklin, to me, this is another example of you can bring virtually anybody in here, and the Bills talk about a best version of yourself. You're going to get that a lot because of what Sean McDermott and his coaching staff know how to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sean McDermott gets a lot of, hate sometimes because he still hasn't won a Super Bowl.
Right.
He still hasn't gotten over that hump, and he still hasn't been, even with an MVP quarterback, he still hasn't been able to do that. But I think an under the radar thing that he does a lot is, like you said, take these guys that aren't really quote unquote wanted or well known and just turn them into guys that produce. And they don't have to be superstars, they just have to produce. And I've always felt like, that now when the Bills had Stephon Diggs, it was a little bit different. He was kind of that X factor guy. But I've always felt like the Bills, outside of Josh Allen and now James Cook, they've never really had a whole bunch of big names. Like you look at some of these other Super Bowl contending teams, the Eagles, the
Chiefs,
Bengals, the Chiefs, the Ravens.
A lot of stars.
Even the 49ers, although
when they're healthy.
Which
never happens, but when they're healthy. Yeah.
But when they're healthy, you have all these teams that have these huge name guys, and they have multiple of them. And then you look at the Bills, and it's like Josh Allen and then James Cook. Yeah, James Cook is a big name guy. At this point he is, but like last season he wasn't. And they're still able to get to the AFC Championship with that. So just having guys that can produce and having guys that aren't a weak spot on the team, I feel like that's been Sean McDermott's kind of biggest strength throughout his time in Buffalo.
Not to feed the haters, because I'm not on the Sean McDermott hating side, but the legitimate argument is this is Sean McDermott's season, where you can find a bunch of guys and turn them into good, solid players, and you'll beat the bejesus out of the Jets, right? But when you get to the playoffs and you face those big names, Chiefs, Ravens, Eagles, whatever, you need your guys to be the elite players. And the Bills and Sean McDermott haven't figured out how to do that yet. Mm-hmm. But, right now, it's September. We don't care about that. It's Sean McDermott's season, so the Bills get to dominate the Jets because what Sean McDermott does well plays super well this time of year. Speaking of the Jets, they had a good opener, or at least it seemed like a good opener, even though it was a loss against the Steelers. And Sean McDermott even said after the game, he thought the Jets were coming in with some momentum. They looked dreadful. I mean, for a team that you're like, maybe they'll be a little more of a pain in the neck than we thought. No way. Justin Fields, this is the stat I saw. Last week, he's had 46 career starts. Last week, his best ever EPA per attempt. This week, his worst ever. That is one precipitous drop. And then you throw in Michael Clemens, who's constantly an idiot, but a guy who helps the Bills out by being an idiot with that terrible roughing the passer penalty. The Jets had another holding penalty on the next drive that extended a drive for more points. This team looked as Jetsy as ever, and Bills fans have to be just cackling the whole way watching these 60 minutes go along.
Yeah, early in the game, there were a couple times where I was like, looks like they might stall out here. Looks like the
Bills.
The Bills, yeah. Where I was like, it looks like the Bills might stall out here. And then all of a sudden I was like, flag, roughing the passer, or holding, or pass interference, or whatever the flag was. There was a flag, and it was on the Jets, and every time it was for a first down. And I was like, okay, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. And it makes it kind of hard to evaluate how the offense is actually doing when stuff like that is happening. Luckily, I think the Jets cleaned it up penalty-wise a little bit later in the game.
But by then it was over.
But still, the offense, still give credit to the offense. But yeah, the Jets shot themselves in the foot hard.
It's a good point you make about the evaluation and looking at this game and, well, really, how good are the Bills? I mean, if you're going to play a train wreck like that, you're probably going to win by 3 touchdowns. But I would go back to, it was week 2, and no matter what the Bills did, there still was going to be the caveat of, well, it's early. You know, we don't know how good the opponent is. You know, if the Jets end up 2-15, we're going to look at this game as how it should have gone, not like, ooh, look how good the Bills were, you know. So we're still way early, no matter what kind of opinion you want to have. So it's fair to look at this and say, you know, maybe the offense wasn't, because like we said early in the game, you know, it wasn't Josh Allen wearing the Superman cape. But you think about that touchdown drive was basically a Josh Allen 40-yard scramble and a roughing the passer penalty. They finished it off nicely with James Cook, but you know, it wasn't a lot of offense happening, you know, scripted offense. Then they get the fumble, go nowhere, kick a field goal. The next drive they stall, get a field goal. It's 13-0, and yeah, they're in control, but they're scratching and clawing to get anything. So, and then after that, we talked about how the Bills kind of just leaned on the Jets till they fell over, and by the middle of the second quarter, the Jets were on the ground flat on their back. So fine, that you still get credit for that when you're the Bills, but you're right. I don't know if we can look at this and say, oh yeah, the Bills offense is fine, it'll be okay. Thursday night is game number 3 for the Bills. We turn right around, catch up with our old friends, the Dolphins, who are now 0-2. They lost to the Patriots today. Caleb, the Dolphins look better, which isn't much because they were a Jets-level train wreck week 1, so improvement was expected. But Tua did go for 3 bills. Tyreek Hill at 100 yards. The offense looked, functional. Maybe if the defense wasn't functional at all.
Yeah, the offense definitely looked a little bit better against the Patriots today. They were able to actually put up some points. A-Chain looked a little bit better. He had a couple explosive plays. Like you said, Tyreek Hill went off for 100. He had some explosive plays. The Dolphins have always been known as the explosive team, the team that's just going to beat you over the top, the team that's going to come out of nowhere and just punch you in the face. They're not the team that's going to have that 12-play drive down the field. They're going to have the 3-play drive and get the 75-yard touchdown. Right. And against the Colts, there was 0 of that, not even a little bit. And there was a little bit more against the Patriots. So offense might be clicking a little bit, but like you said, that defense, I think it was 33 points that they led up to the Patriots, which Patriots could be a good team. Drake May looks decent, but it's still not this high-powered offense that you should be allowing 33 points to.
And you want to play the early season game. The first game was against a Colts team that just beat the Broncos. So maybe the Colts are really good. And yeah, the Dolphins looked bad that first game, but if you look back at a Colts team that's suddenly 12-5, it doesn't look as bad as you thought, So, all right. We will be back then. Thanks for watching BKL Nightly. We will have an unusual schedule this week, by the way, with a Thursday game. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll have shows. Wednesday will be the Let's Talk Ball show with me and Carl Jones. And then we'll have another wrap-up show Friday morning with the Bills and the Dolphins. For Caleb Carr, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching the Bills 2-0 on to Miami.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.